Yeah,
Oh, right. So, okay. And you had the injections as well.
yeah, yeah,
So what was the point? Right. Okay then. All right
yeah.
then. So, all right. That okay then. Um, right. So let me know if there's anything you need and get in touch. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Carl.
All right. Sorry to you're in hospital with COVID. What an absolute waste of time those injections were. Okay then.
Okay, bye,
Okay. You look after yourself, Pete. Get well soon. Bye.
bye.
Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Yeah, Pete's in hospital with COVID, and what an app! All those people that were completely duped having those pointless injections for yeah. So he's in hospital with COVID. So what an absolute joke all that's turned out to be. Right, okay then. Anyway, so what we're going to do, we're going to look at King David of Wales, right, or King David of Cymru. So that's what we're going to be doing tonight. We didn't have you last week, Ruth. So I might just do a little bit of a recapping to do with the mold cape and what have you. So and actually, what I might do is just have you guys talking about the mold cape for a couple of minutes whilst I just get some stuff done in the background. So Anne, what do we know about the mold cape now? So you tell us. Where's she gone? Oh my God. All right. Okay, Richard, you're gonna have to do it. What do we know about the mold cape?
Well, we don't know whether the reconstruction is accurate or not. I think
Yeah,
that
I
is
think we've
the
There
biggest
is,
sort of thing in question with it.
yeah,
You know, was it a cape or was it a corset or was it corselet or whatever?
yeah.
Well, that's one of the biggest. And as you say, was it the one made out of two that they made up at the British Museum?
Yeah,
You know, it's just then how much of it is reconstructed.
yeah,
As we were looking, a lot of it was didn't really match.
no, no,
So I think that's the biggest thing with it, isn't it?
yeah. And obviously, what was the key thing that we mentioned on Wednesday night, which was something that we didn't look at last week?
Well, I suppose a lot of it, whether it was Bronze Age or Iron Age,
Yeah.
or the other thing, if it'd been made in the Bronze Age and still being used in the Iron Age is another sort of
Ah,
topic. So, what sort of period of time was it in use? Is another.
uh, uh, carry on. I'm just keep talking. This is something that yeah. Um, you're on something there, something that we didn't even mention last night, and something that I've not thought of. Go on, go for it.
Yeah, well, it's just with the iron and everything. So, it's possibly it deteriorated over time and it was sort of modified and strengthened, stiffened with sort of iron sort of bands or whatever. I say all the iron is virtually disintegrated, so we're just sort of speculating on it. But you say if there was iron found with it, it was obviously buried in the Iron Age,
Yes, yes.
you know. So
Um,
where is it?
I'm we'll do that in a minute. We're going to do all that. So carry on, Richard. This is a nice. This is something quite nice because we didn't. I didn't think of any of this. Go for it.
yeah, well, it's just as you say, you know, it could, and there's also the possibility it's come from somewhere else originally and sort of traveled to moles and been picked up by this certain sort of clan, you know, to use it. But I suppose really a lot of it, when the gold has been analysed, Has it ever been analysed where the gold actually came from? Is it Welsh gold?
Actually, this when we looked at the Mold Cape a few months back, and I said I was going to get hold of the book.
Yeah.
There was some talk along the line that the gold may actually come from Ireland, right? And then we think about stylistically. We think about the styles on it, and we've got that shield that we showed last night. That shield last night that we actually showed on the screen, which is actually from West Wales, which probably dates to about 3,000 years ago. And we saw stylistically there was something about the design that
Yeah.
could be similar to the Mold Cape. But this idea now the one reason why I do classes and teach classes is that it's a way of getting people's ideas outside the thread of academia, right? Now, you've mentioned something tonight that I haven't even thought about, and I should have thought about it. This artifact could have been very old before it was buried. And if you can't date gold because it's not organic. So you can't get radiocarbon dates from it. The other information that was found with it would have been contaminated, has been lost. The data, so it's a presumed date of approximately 3,800 years ago. But when you're actually finding iron with it, it's no longer a Bronze Age artifact. As Richard said, it's an Iron Age artifact. This object could be very old before it was buried. And one thing that we do see in prehistory is that sometimes what we do get is artifacts that are incredibly old before they're deposited in the ground. And one good example of this is that when we look at West Kennet Long Barrow, and West Kennet Long Barrow, for example, we've found bones in there that predate the construction of the Long Barrow. So by I think we're looking at I think the bone was one of the bones was about 800 years dated, was 800 years older than the building itself, and that's an artifact. So we don't have any clear dates for the Mold Cape, but finding iron residue and iron rust with the artifact means definitely that it wasn't deposited in the Iron Age. It wasn't deposited in the Bronze Age. It was deposited in the Iron Age. But it doesn't mean to say that it wasn't Bronze Age in date. And I think that's a really interesting idea, which it might be more than an idea, and I could actually use that definitely. So I'm yeah, that little bit of thinking's really good. That bit of thinking's really good. Right, we will get on with the class now. We've got Judith who's joined us.
Hello.
Oh, we can hear you, Judith. Brilliant.
Yes, I know. Exciting.
Oh my God! And anyway, Judith came to me a few weeks ago, and I convinced her to do these classes on a Thursday, right? And hopefully Judith might turn around and say, "Oh, I want to do more of them next month," which would be great. But one of the things that Judith is planning to come to my live shows as well, and what we're doing is examining some of the subject matter for the live shows. Right, and then when we've got the live shows, we've got the big images and we've got some artifacts, and I'm on stage talking, and there's a bit of music. So it's moving all the stuff that we're doing now into that. Right, so this is the vehicle, right? So hopefully this is going to be
us to tears, are you?
so Judith, this is going to be very useful for you, and Anne's going to the live show as well. And I
which
think
one?
I am.
right.
Oh, I'm going to Chepstow.
Anne's going to
Right.
Chepstow.
I'm
So
dying to meet you. You are so funny. Can I come to the one at Chepstow? I'm not a stalker, I promise.
Oh,
Oh my God!
oh, yes. Yes, do. I mean, where do
Okay.
you live? Where do you live?
In Yorkshire.
Oh,
I know, that's why it's so difficult to plan, because it's so far.
well, Chepstow is, you know, on the way to Bristol.
Can I
Yeah, so
can
I'm
I just
looking at
stop
about
you
a
guys a
9-hour
minute?
drive.
How many hour drive?
Probably about 9 hours.
Oh,
Yeah,
you'll have to go to Brecon then, and I'll save you 2 hours. So
Will it?
but if you did go to Chepstow, it's likely that the Chepstow one's going to be fully booked and whatever
Yeah.
before anything else.
you
Because
can have you can have 2 of my tickets.
Oh, bless you. Oh.
hey, I gotta try and sell tickets, and shut up.
Oh, I
Yeah,
got
I know you got
4.
4. You got for
I
your
don't think
mates,
I'll get 4 people to go with me.
but I know
And I was going to
Kate.
stay overnight somewhere.
Good. So you should. You could stay with Richard.
So
Um,
distance could come and stay with me.
Oh.
It'll be a
oh
bit.
my God. We've got to crack on. We've
Go on,
got to
then.
crack on. Anyway, it's good to have you along, Judith, and
Oh, thank
you know
you.
we can obviously have a chat and stuff at the end, and it's good to hear your voice. Right, so one thing that Ruth said earlier on, I cut her off. She said, "Where is the mold cape now?" Well, the answer to that is threefold. The mold cape, um, one of the there were 2 mold capes, right? 90% of the other mold cape was melted down and made into rings and jewelry in 1833, right? So that's and a big chunks of the actual mold cape in the British Museum, or corselet, or whatever this thing is in the British Museum, they call it a cape, right? Big chunks of that are no longer exist, so that was melted down for rings and stuff. So the actual mold cape on display is actually in the British Museum, right? And then there's a copy of it in the Mold Museum, right? So that answers your question, Ruth, right? So what we're going to do, we're gonna complete what we did last week, right? I said that we ran out of time last week, and I said, right, we're going to complete what we did last week. But the magic of this is giving you this will be on the with the 5 live shows. We got Ystrid Gunlice, we got Brecon, we got Lampeter, we got Abergavenny, and we got Chepstow. So we've got the 5 dates next year. The reason why we need to we're selling them now is because I need to be able to say to people who actually go into the show that we've actually got people going, right? So this will be there on the night, right? This book will be there on the night. I'm not going to let everyone look at it, because you can imagine if we've got 100 people at Chepstow, no, you're not all going to handle a book. But if one or two of you hang around at the end, and I'm absolutely exhausted, sat in a slump, and Ella's there, and she can say, "Oh, go and have a quick look at the book," you can, right? But this is the book itself, and this book is, as I said last week, Archaeologia, volume 26, dating to 1836, right? And the one thing about this book is that it was actually given to us, not given to us, that we had a donation of £200, and somebody said, "I want you to get hold of the book," right? I want you to get hold of the book, and Meg online, she says inspirational, love it. I want you to get hold of the book, and all she wants from this is photocopies of the pages, which we're gonna have copies in the live show. Some of the pages in A2, right? So we'll just say, look, this is what this is about. And so I'm not going to repeat any more really of what we did last week. I know you weren't able to make it last week, Ruth, but I'm sure you can ask me again, or go back on the recording, or ask one or others of us. So as I'm flicking through the pages now, trying to get the right pages. Do you know, have you ever had one of those things that suddenly the book that you had has disappeared and it's been replaced by another one? Because I can't actually find the pages. Hang on a minute. I can't miss the mold caping, yeah, because that's the whole point. Right, hang on. I'm actually gonna have to go to the front of the book, right? And I've got to be very careful when handling this, because I don't want to damage it.
You should have gloves on.
Yeah, I should have gloves on. Have you ever tried giving a lecture with gloves on? Right, so the gold corselet found at Mold in Flintshire page 428. Yeah, and you are right. And after this, it'll be handled by the printer, but you know, that'll be it. So obviously one thing that I didn't say last week was that the courselet is just under the width of this book, right? So I've got to show you this quickly, right? That there is the courselet. That is in scale. That's to scale, right? So that's actually the height of this as you wore it, right? So that's that. And where we got to last week, where we got to last week, we had about 15 pages to go to. And we basically got to approximately the bit about explaining similarities with other bits of gold elsewhere, right? And I think the one thing that should be said is that when we're looking in this book, it refers to, for example, the word armor, gold armor, right? It's not armor, right? But then again, what is armor? And basically, because this is obviously written by a bloke, men talk about masculine things like armor, and women would have talking about corselets, except this guy refers to it as a corselet and armor. And basically, what we've got is similarities to do with the likes of Cornwall, you know, in golds being found there, and iron, but nothing actual in design to what we're going to look on the screen. If we put what we've got on the screen now, and it's very exciting to talk about this because I was thinking for months, am I going to be able to get hold of this? Because you know, £200 is a lot of money for a book. And justifying spending that of everyone else's money was a bit sort of tight. So we mentioned we looked at this last night, and we said, right, the reconstructions, that's the reconstruction in the museum. It was open backed, not enclosed, right? And that is what's in the book, right? And one thing that I didn't really say last night, and I didn't say on Tuesday, and I didn't say last week, was this little line from the book. It says as follows: gold armor is said to have been found in Ireland, but other objects have perhaps been confounded with it, such as the golden crescents, basically golden crescents that go around your neck. They're basically flat pieces of circular gold with a gap to go around your neck, crescents, right? Or luminalize. And here we go, which have been found in Cornwall and Normandy, as well as in Ireland. This is the line I want. At a place known as Jodan Moraine, which is an island. So there's one being found there. And that one is referred to as a breastplate of judgment of the Irish Druids, found in the county of Limerick and perhaps elsewhere in Ireland. Now, this is something that we discussed in detail on Tuesday, right? And what we discussed on Tuesday was when you think about the Welsh, when you think about the Gorthev and the Eisteddfod, right? You're talking about the ceremonial robes that these people wear in the Gorthev, and basically the Gorthev is the poetry reading bit of the Eisteddfod, which is a musical festival, right? And all this was recreated towards the end of the 1700s into the early 1800s, and basically all that is like a festivity of Welsh culture, right? And basically what you do find is gowns. There are 3 different types of gowns that they wear at the Gorthead, right? There's blue gowns, there's green gowns, and there's white gowns. I think that's the right order. You've got novices, and you've got bards, and you've got druids, right? So all this type of stuff is like a reconstruction that they've actually done associated with the Gorsev, right? And I'm going to get to the point. So the design of some of the the corselets that they're actually wearing over the gowns are like this, right? The design is like this, except the idea of the gorset and all the rest of it came together before the discovery of this, right? So it's almost as if it's intuitive. The design is intuitive in the culture before this was actually found. It's like It's like a wavy style of art. As in the book, it's the style of art. It's the corslet sort of projection from the find itself, right? So here we go. The style of which there is some resemblance in the raised converging lines and the pellets introduced. It said in the channels, right? And one thing that we did last night, that by the time this was found and reported in this book Archaeologia in 1836, because they're writing about it in 1835. It was published in 1836. At that point, they find a bronze shield that's found in Cardiganshire, right? And that bronze shield is just a circular bronze shield, right? With there's a slight design like this on it, which is repeated in a circular design, and that's found in West Wales, right? But that's made in bronze, right? And lots of this stuff, and that's actually on display in the British Museum. And if I remember, I think it's only fair that if I look at my phone and we go on Google, because we actually showed this shield last night, because it would be good to show you the shield. Right, I wasn't going to show you that tonight because I was going to go on to the dafydd stuff. But as you guys have just been talking about the live shows and stuff, right? I just thought, right, okay, why don't we just give you a little bit more background? So what we've got there. So it's known as the Ros Rhydd shield, right? And if there it is straight away, you type in that, and it wants me to find it. Right, so there we go. Hang on. Right, there it is. Bingo.
Yeah.
And that, can you see that there? Even though it looks very, very different. It looks very, very different than the mold cape overall. But you can see that there's a repetitory pattern, and you've got the pellets and the lines. Those pellets, those raised bits, they're hammered in from behind. Those raised bits and within the lines. So if we look at that, that's in bronze. That was found in West Wales, and the dating for that. Interestingly enough, this was founded about 1834, right? But it's saying it was actually found earlier in 1804, and it ended up in the British Museum, right? So the dating for this is approximately, roughly, if you go with a mean date there, you've got, this is, I know Wikipedia, but it's saying roughly the latest possible date is 3,000 years ago. The earliest possible date is 3,300 years ago, right? But the point is, this is bronze, right? It is a bronze object. But again, it's a bronze object, and they're saying it's talking about copper alloy use, i.e., bronze. That's what bronze is, just copper alloy. And then we put that into the context, right? So if we go back to now, we understand what we're talking about and what we're looking at, right? So if we go back to here, right, we're getting an idea of this sort of universal design. And let's say the word, Anne, right? It's not Celtic, right? It's not Celtic design. It's clearly not Celtic art. It's nothing like that. But then we don't get anything like this sort of Celtic art form, as it is an art form, not a population movement, right? Which I've got to make clear. This is a completely different form. This is our own native form of design, right? Now, as we finish with this little bit of the mold cape thing tonight, right? What I want to do is I want to go to oh God, where is it? I deleted it. Damn it. Right, okay then. So what it is this cape associated with a legend, right? Is it associated with a legend which is based on fact, right? And let's do this. Back in the day, right? Back in 1836, a Dr. Owen Pugh conjectured that Brynir Ellion where this is found at Mold, is not translated as the Mound of the Goblins, is actually translated as the Hill of the Sprites, right? Or it could actually be the grave of Bentley Gower, which is Bentley the Great, who's an exalted chieftain. Now, Richard used some choice words earlier on. I think he said like a tribal group or a party of people, you know, they get hold of this gold thing from somewhere and they bring it and it's associated with some kind of a leader. Well, that sort of links in with this Bentley Gower or Maur bloke, Bentley Maur. And it's also associated with the wordings of Beddau Milwr, which is the grave of Milwr. Whoever Milwr is, whoever Bentley is, Gower. The point is that there's a ditty. There's writing that is associated with this Bentley Gower or Maur. It goes, the mound of the grave in the Great Plain. Well, there's 2 points. The mound of the grave in the Great Plain. It's a mound of 15 tons of pebbles, right? So it's definitely a mound. So it's a mound. There is a mound. So if this is referring to a mound, it's a mound, and there's a grave underneath. So those 2 facts are right. It's within a Great Plain of the Mold landscape, right? Because it's fairly flat in that bit. The rest of it's surrounded by humps and bumps, but there's a plain there, right? So it goes to say, the mound of the grave in the Great Plain, the weight of his hand on his sword, is the grave of Bentley, the son of Bentley the giant, right? Now, when you think about that, obviously we don't know anything about the sword, right? But is some of the residue that was found there, some of the iron residue associated with the sword, for example, is the grave of Bentley, the son of Bentley the giant, right? So it's not Bentley Gower or Bentley Maur, the giant, is the son of Bentley, right? Now, I'm not saying that it is for 1 minute, because there might be lots more gold capes out there, right? But I would also like to say that if we think about this Bentley, this may be associated with that individual. It could be, but then again, whenever we find things which are important, we try to link them in with history. And quickly,
Bentlech is a place in Anglesey.
Bentlech.
Yes.
Yes.
I just thought maybe I'm looking it up to see if there's any connection.
Bentlech, as in Bentley, or yeah, it might be, right, or Bentley, but unfortunately, you know, it's all about the wordings and translations. And finally, what we're gonna basically mention is, we know about Bentley because of the writings of Nennius in about the 800-900s AD, right? So Nennius is writing about Bentley, right? And actually, Carly's come in at the right time as usual from the States. She says most plausible that it was a saint's shrine demolished by Martin Luther's revolution. Therefore, it was a well-known shrine that's been removed. Well, to be honest with you, right, we don't really know when this was buried, right? We've no idea when this was finally placed into the ground, right? And I loved what Richard said earlier on. However, Carly, I don't know if you've been reading this book, because there's the writer here sort of says some stuff and sort of disagrees with what I've just said, right? But he's actually told us this, right? Yes, Meg Online said Ben mutated from pen, as in pen, which is yeah. So it might be Pentley, right? Which might be big head, might be large. You know, it's difficult to say. It's difficult to say. Yeah, it's difficult.
Capstone.
Say that again.
Capstone. It's some. It says here the name Bentlech is perhaps mutated form of penclech.
Clec being stone, yes.
Literally head slab or head
Or
rock
big. Or
or
big.
black stone.
Or
Well,
big.
this is only somebody who in Wikipedia, you know, who's surmising about it. But yes, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. Pen. Also, the other thing as well is Welsh. Welsh is a layered language, right? So, ben could mean pen, but also pen could mean hen, which means hen ogleth, which means the Old North hen, Hen, which could mean old, right? So we're now going into different levels. However, Carly, wait there, right? Because what we're going to do, the writer here disagrees with himself and actually agrees with you. So here we go. But perhaps we may be pardoned for observing that if this is Bentley Gaward, Benllig, and the next word Gawr, Gawr, or Mawr, Triglad Meddwl, which has been altered, we don't know, is the same personage as the Bentley mentioned by Nennius, the historian. You know, he's writing about Nennius, the history of the people of Britain and so on. Bentley Gawr had not, according to the same historian, any place of sepulchre, for in punishment of his refusal to receive Saint Germanius into his city. Nennius is referring to this Bentley Gawr as being a tyrant. That if Saint Germanus is referring to Bentley, right? Now this is where it gets confusing. If Saint Germanus is referring to Bentley, Saint Germanus is over here in the 440s, late 440s, right? To convert the wrong Christians in Britain to the real Christianity, right? And if he's coming across with somebody called Bentley Gaward, according to Nennius, right, then this Bentley Gawr is not somebody who lived in the Iron Age, is somebody who actually lived in the years after the Roman civilization. Therefore, going back to what Carly suggested on here, is he some kind of a saint? Anyway, right, so we're not going to say any more than that because we've gone down a few different avenues, which is great, right? But I think overall, what Richard suggested tonight is actually something that we might use in the show, i.e., not only that we have iron there, how do you know that this artifact wasn't buried in the ground after being used for a long time and then being buried? We don't know, right? But it could have come from Ireland. It could have come from anywhere. But because the archaeology has been destroyed and mucked around with, that's where we get a problem. So what we're going to do, you'll notice that when we do the live shows, the live shows will be very similar to this. We've got very excited about something, and you know, we've got stage arguments on the stage, you know, and all the rest of it, right? And then what we're going to do, we're going to go to another subject, and the other subject that we're going to actually go to is Dafydd, King Dafydd of North Wales, right? And what we're going to do is start off with a little bit of a history lesson, right? And it's quite clear. It's quite minor, right? Oh, and by the way, Carly said I did quite a lot of research last night. A mining saint. There you go. And actually, Carly, right? The interesting thing, Carly's online. The interesting thing is that North Wales is a big area for mining, right? Particularly, you've got the Brumbo ironworks, which isn't too far away, right? And you've got and some of the miners up there. You've got massive coal mining industry, you've got iron mining industry, you've got copper mining industry, you've got gold mining industry. It's all going on in North Wales. So very, very interesting that you mentioned that, Carly. And also it's all going off online. I've got to get myself on the screen now. It's all going on YouTube, Judith, right? Basically, somebody's basically said Germanus, Garman, Llan Armon, as in Church of St. Garman, is further upstream of Mold. And so they're talking about this Germanus.
I know, it's so exciting, isn't it?
It's exciting. I going to do with this in the live show? I tell you what, it's only a 2-hour show. We got to do the big chunks of the Pavlan Cape, right? I tell you what, what I'm going to have to do now to calm things down, because this is gone off on wildfire now. But I've got to get my little book a minute. I got to get my
Just
little.
making connections.
We're making connections.
Terrible.
And actually, when we do King David this evening, if we actually manage to get to do it, right? So some of the subjects that we'll be doing in the live show, right, and it's all Richard's fault. Some of the subjects that we'll definitely be doing the Pavlan Cave, right? That's a defo. We'll be doing the Mary Lloyd. That's a defo. We'll be doing the Mole Cape. That's a defo. That'll be in all shows, right? We're also doing the Stone of Mind Clear, right, which is near Brecon. So those are the subjects that we're doing in all shows, and we're also doing the real truth about the Chilean amphitheater. So can you imagine? I'm doing like 10 minutes on the Pavlan cave. We've got like I don't know, 15 minutes on the Pavlan Cave, 10 minutes on the Mold Cape, where we're going to be sort of, then we're going to be like 10 minutes on the Mary Lloyd, and then we've got looking at the truth of the Chilean amphitheater, right? And you know, we've got King David, right? So that and the Mine Clear Stone, that's over an hour and a bit done, right? So then we're going to have to try and find some other equal interesting things. And we're going to be looking at, for example, the Battle of Kilmary, maybe. We're going to be looking at the John Story hoard found on the Sully Moor that I think was greatly fabricated in 1899, whether Richard agrees with that or not. We'll be looking at Lissig Pillar when we can fit it in. So in other words, some of the, say, Chepstow will have different subjects from Mustard Gun Lice, but some of the stuff will be the same, right? So you're not going to get it all in one show, because there'll be stuff in other shows, and unfortunately can't cover it all in some, because some shows we've got, for example, when we got Mustard Gun Lice, some of the local people want us to look at the bones in Danorogoff Cave. Well, we won't be looking at the bones in Danorogoff Cave in Chepstow, right? So there we go. That's going to be the format. So what we're going to do now, and the oh yeah, I want to chuck in one of the shows, right? St. Roch's Chapel by Merthyr Mawr
Oh,
Church.
yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
so you've
that was really
so
intriguing.
you've got this weird chapel, right, which has been put together from bits, right? Some bits from UNE Priory, and what they've done, they've and when you think about it, right, when you've got these ancient stones, right, at St. Roch's, oh, we've got to do St. Roch's Chapel next week. I'm sorry. Basically, you've got these not prehistoric. You've got these stones dating from about five 600 years AD, right? And they're actually in the chapel, right? So and the chapel is actually based on an Iron Age site with banks and ditches around it. The problem is, if they talk about the stones being moved to the place of the chapel, right? And they're inside the chapel, right? So that means that the stones were placed there before the chapel was built. So therefore, the chapel that they're saying is medieval can't be medieval, because the stones that were placed there were in other localities. So we'll be doing that next week. This is the fascinating thing. But I'm not saying that we're going to even do that at Chepstow. We might do it at Brecon. Sorry, Judith. You'll have to do all the shows. You'll have to. Anne's fine.
Oh, honestly, we've had such fun doing these trips, you know, to see these places, and it's probably the best way to share it. About it.
And actually, with the live show, when we're talking about the amphitheater, right? Well, I'm giving too much away, but the amphitheater at Chilean, there's a piece of evidence of the amphitheater at Chilean, i.e., there's a bathhouse built before the amphitheater's built, and that means that the amphitheater could not have been built the time that they said it was built, and that's something else that we're going to be looking at in the live show. So
I think that's a theme.
So our minds are going to explode.
I wouldn't worry about it. I'm sure I'm not
Yeah,
going to.
I think a lot of these timelines have got mixed up, sometimes deliberately and sometimes by accident.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just go deliberately. It's an easy answer. So,
Well,
so right, I've got the girls online. They've gone off on one, and one of them said I get to it. I get very excited too. Yeah, well, that's fine. So the next thing that we're going to do, what I'm going to tell you about as I chuck my phone around, right? I've got the next thing I want to do tonight is the following, right? Okay, let's just say it as it is, right? Whenever you go on the internet, right? Oh, hang on. Whenever you go on the internet, they always talk the following. They say that the last true prince, note the word prince, of Cymru Wales, right, was Llewellyn the Last, who died in 1282, on the 11th of December, 1282, and he died in battle at Kilmary, and then it ends. But there's one problem with that. His brother David then took over the kingdom, and he was hung, drawn, and quartered for treason against the English king, right? So that means that somebody in history has been erased, because what we want to end history quite nicely and say, right, but David looked after Llewellyn's family and protected his family and defended his family in the rest of what was left of the kingdom against Edward I. And I'm sorry, they completely erased this king out of history. And why do I refer to him as a king and not a prince? It's quite easy, right? In Wales, we refer to our leaders as principes or prince principus, which is basically that's one way of saying it, which is basically a princip, which is a princip, which is basically a leader, right? And in English, they use that term as derogatory to say that the Welsh had princes and not kings, right? But they were principus were princip they were our leaders, right?
Well,
They
is
were
it
our
the same as
kings.
principle?
Yeah, principle. Yeah, that's it. The principle. Yeah, it's the same word, right? There's different ways of putting it, but you've just said it, right? It's um,
Name.
yeah, it's because we use that title, right? Instead of the word rex, which is Latin for king, right? We didn't use the word bren. We that was the title that we used, right? So the point is, the English are then derogatory said, or Llewellyn ap Griffith was the last prince of Wales, right? Oh, well, David really wasn't a prince. He was no one, right? But he was the one who took over from David, and he still defended the kingdom for months against the English. Unfortunately, his time was up. So what we're going to do, we're going to see what we can do now, right? I'm aiming to completely finish. We started a little bit late. There was a couple of delays tonight, a little bit myself, Pete, and whatever. So what we're going to do, we're going to go till 20 past tonight, and then we're going to do questions like we did last week, and that will be a full hour, right? So before we look at some images, I want to start off. David ap Griffith, son of Gruffydd, right? And Llewellyn, his brother, was also son of Gruffydd. We'll look at a timetable in a minute. He was born as the youngest son of Gruffydd, and he was the youngest son of Gruffydd. There were four sons. There was Llewellyn. There was two in the middle, which we'll mention in a minute, and David was the youngest one, right? So he was the last one who was able to defend the kingdom against the English, right? So he was born on the 11th of July in 1238, and he was hung, drawn, and quartered, not a natural death, on the 3rd of October 1283. And he wasn't the first one, but he was one of the first people to be hung, drawn, and quartered in British history, right? And he was this Welsh king, right? And I don't like using the word Welsh. Welsh means foreigner, right? So Cymru king, but if okay, leader of Cymru, right? So he was amazingly enough, He's written in the annals as being somebody who's hung, drawn, and quartered. Right, he's remembered for that, being hung, drawn, and quartered. And we're remembering him tonight as the last king of Wales. Forget Owain Glyndŵr, right? He was the last king of Wales in 1283. Right. Yeah. So reason why we're forgetting Owain Glyndŵr is because it just makes things easier for me. So he was the last native king, right? Except Owain Glyndŵr had a claim between 1399 and 1415, but that's another story, right? And we're not doing that in the live show because there's something else about that yeah, we're not doing that. So right, so what we're going to do, we're going to chuck some images on you. So in other words, David died at the age of 45, right? So he was younger than all of us, except for Judith and Ruth, who were only 40, right? So we're gonna get on some images now, right? We're gonna get these images up and good. Right, okay. Right, there's the shield. There is the shield of David, right? Now that shield itself is notably blue. And I was going to basically what I'm going to mention is I'm going to I'm going to go I'm going to add something into this lecture now from the previous bit, right? Which when we think about sort of descendants and stuff, right? Carly's talking about Ben may be Jewish, and from there the pen, as in Ben became pen, means soul of Jesus. And it's talking about he was imprisoned in Chester, and there's things about descendants and so on and all the rest of it. Very interesting stuff. But again, it takes it to Chester, which isn't too far away. So I thought I'd chuck that in there. And interesting enough, this guy would have had a link with Chester as well. So there's his shield. And what I tried to do, I've tried to get somebody to design this, and I was going to print it and make flags, right? Because you can't get a flag of King David. You can't get them. Even if you can get one. Somebody can do you one for about 120 odd quid, and these flags only last a few months, right? So I'd love to be able to fly this on my land in West Wales, but I can't because I can't get hold of one. If somebody wants to donate 400 quid, I'll get one printed. But anyway, no, that's taking a Michael.
I'll
Sorry.
do it for you for less than that.
All right, Anne, I tell you what, chuck 100 quid over, right?
We'll get print.
Could you?
Yeah. Well,
all right then.
I could try.
Well, you're looking at the design. Type in the internet, David up Griffith. As you can tell, Judith, these lectures just go off onto another tangent. Yeah, good. Right, so let's think about this. If you go on before he becomes our king, right? He was obviously a prince, right? So that makes sense. It makes sense in the story. His brother Llewellyn becomes king, and that's that, right? So what happens? The whole story comes together, right? The whole story comes together if we look at the timeline, right? Oh, by the way, let's just think about this a minute. Let's just forget about the timeline a minute. I didn't know that was coming. He's basically hung, drawn, and quartered, right? So basically, what's happening? He's hung to the point of death, but he's still alive. He's drawn by horses. And as he's being drawn by the horses, he's also, before this, he's dragged through the streets as well. That's not on there, right? So he's dragged through the streets. He's hung. So he's dragged through the streets. People chuck stuff for him, excrement and whatever, right? He's dragged through the streets, and then he's hung. He's in pretty bad state at this place, but he's still alive, right? And then I don't think the king on the 3rd of October 1283 gives him any mercy, right? Because he wants the idea of Wales being its own country ended, right? And he did a good job. He did a very good job. But anyway, what happens next? His limbs are cut off, as he's being drawn, right? He's just about to cut off one of his legs, right? Now, there's another translation of this where you're hung, you're dragged through the streets. Again, we forget that. Dragged through the streets, you're hung, you're drawn like this, right? And as you're drawn like this, you're put on a board or some description, right? As in Braveheart, right? And they slice just from under your neck all the way down to your appendix, right? And they rip the skin open, right? And they let your guts hang out, and you're still alive, yeah. And then then sometimes they show your guts to you. Well, there's blood everywhere, right? You're not going to return from this. So there was a very, very nasty death indeed. And this is a medieval translation. Oh, here we go. Did they skin them and wear it as a belt? No, that's the Vikings, love. No, we're not doing that one. We're not going to skin them. The fact of the matter is, I'm doing David because I'm sticking by David. Lots of people don't like David in Welsh history, but they don't tell a true story because this guy tried to save his brother's family. He protected his brother's family with his life, and he ended up losing his life protecting his brother's family as the last king of Wales. Right. So if we there he is, and he looks a really proud man. He would have been 45, maybe 44 at this, right? But he looks very. This is going to be an illustration from the Victorian period, so you know he's not going to be looking like this, right? And it's very likely that the crest on his chest is going to look slightly different as well. But the colorations are there. Oh, and basically somebody saying, William Wallace, what's the difference, right? Big difference. But you know, it's said that William Wallace had links with Wales as well, but that's something else. If you want to go with that, I don't know if that's true. But the thing is, what's the difference? This guy was the prototype of the execution for William Wallace, right? So in other words, when William Wallace was eventually captured in Scotland, Edward I said, right, what we're going to do the same to William Wallace, what we did with the last King of Wales, right? And this is actually his brother Llewellyn. Now, people display statues of Llewellyn, but they do not display statues of David, which again is a really important narrative. And this guy needs to be remembered. And I tell you what, if when Carly's saying one is a fable and this is not. So yeah, well, William Wallace did exist, but the fact of the matter is the terrible nature of the real terrible nature, the narrative, you know, we've got we're getting people illustrating this, and we've got a medieval illustration of this as well. This did really happen. So looking at this chart, this chart is there. So what we've got, we're not going to be too pure on dates, right? So David, there he is. He's at the end there. David. He's on the right hand side. David. A younger son of Gruffydd ap Llewellyn. Now, Gruffydd ap Llewellyn, there he is, right? Gruffydd ap Llewellyn with Serena. Now, the one who was ruling then was David ap Llewellyn, right? There was a bit of sort of a mess between what was going on with David ap Llewellyn and Gruffydd ap Llewellyn before the coming of the new king, which was naturally going to be Llewellyn, right? So now Llewellyn, if we want to look at this chart, Llewellyn the last, Llewellyn ap Gruffydd, he reigned, right, from 1246 to 1282. Now remember, 1246, 1282, right? And this man was born Llewellyn ap Gruffydd, right? Llewellyn the last on there. It's Llewellyn the last is Llewellyn ap Gruffydd, who's the son of Gruffydd, as David's the son of Gruffydd. This is the way we do the genealogy in Wales. Llewellyn ap Gruffydd was born in 1223, and we know when he died, on the 11th of December 1282, right? So you can imagine that there's this guy Llewellyn ap Gruffydd is 59 when he dies, so he's oldie worldy. He's you know, he knows his land, and he's been fighting the English for some years. David has either been working with his brother or against his brother at times, right? So obviously coming to the throne of the kingdom of Gwynedd, North Wales, the house of Aberfraw. In 1241, he is recorded as having been handed over to. What's happening is that at one stage, as Llewellyn's going to become the new king in 1246, before the deaths of David ap Llewellyn and Gruffydd ap Llewellyn. So you can tell this is really complicated stuff. I need to get into the text of what I'm doing. David was handed over to Henry III, right? Alongside Rodri, as a hostage agreement, right? So Gruffydd had two of his children handed to the custody of Henry III as a hostage agreement. Basically, you don't attack England, right? We won't attack you, but if you attack England, we will execute two of your children, right? So that was a hostage agreement. So when you think about it, David, as you can probably work out, is very resentful that his own dad had handed him over as a hostage to Henry III, right? So what happens when David came as age under Welsh law on the 11th of July 1252? He was brought back at some time. He was brought back to Wales, right? And David was asked to pay homage to King Henry III of England, right? So the act of paying homage to Henry III is basically saying, actually, I know Llewellyn the Last is the overlord of Wales, but actually, you, the English king, are my overlord, right? So it's a way of control. It's a way of controlling the borders. The Scots did this, the English did this, the Irish did this. We all did this. It's a way of controlling what the narrative. So the English are bigger than us, right? So they're basically saying, we won't attack you, but give us two of your sons, right? That'll be sort of surety against no wars. This is what's going to happen. So it's got very, very mucky, right? Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting, and this is why people don't like David, and I'm going to tell you about it in a moment. But before then, the girls online, they're talking about Wallace. The name is a Welsh name, right? And there's talk of a mining town and so on. Anyway, that's something else. There's something else there. They're talking. Judith, you need to do both. You need to do the online thing, and you need to do this. Right, good.
Oh, just one at a time, I'm afraid. I don't know what I'm doing with either.
Hey, just think. I've got to teach this, and I've got to deal with you guys. I've got to deal with the class. I've got to deal with that everything, and I've got to deal with my head. Right. So what's
multitasking?
Multitasking. Now, I've just chucked this in here as a red herring. If you notice that sort of chronology, David is shown there. Llewellyn the Last, fair enough. When you go to this, there's this little thing online, right? Now, we know that Gruffydd ap Llewellyn, right? There you go, Gruffydd ap Llewellyn, right? His brother, David ap Llewellyn, is the king before Llewellyn. So what you do, if you look at this, it says here, the little line there, ap Llewellyn, that should say Gruffydd ap Llewellyn, right? Who was the brother of David ap Llewellyn. So the leader before Llewellyn ap Gruffydd, who died in 1282. So if I tell you what, so don't get too confusing, loves, right? So let's just do this. That should say Gruffydd, who was the brother of David. David was the leader before Llywelyn ap Gruffydd, right? Llywelyn ap Gruffydd. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is where is David ap Gruffydd? Because he's not on the list, right? Because it's almost as if he's been erased from history, right? If they're going to teach this to children in school, they could at least have Gruffydd ap Llywelyn, Llywelyn ap Gruffydd, and David ap Gruffydd, and he's not there. David's not there. So the other David, not David ap Llywelyn. There should be David ap Gruffydd, Llywelyn ap Gruffydd, Gruffydd ap Llywelyn, Llywelyn ap Gruffydd, and David ap Gruffydd. But David's not on the list, and this is why I get really upset about this. It doesn't feel right. Okay, it really doesn't feel right. Now, this is the chronology. Prince of Gwynedd, King of Wales, or whatever you want to call him, which I do. He reigned from 1246. So in other words, he reigned for 30. I can't get my maths in here. Oh, my head's gone. Right. Okay. Right. Maths. Okay. He reigned for 36 years. Right. So, and there we go. If somebody wants to correct me on that, they can. But the predecessor, you got. So there you go. It shows there. So you got successor David ap Gruffydd. So on this chronology online on the Wikipedia, it clearly says that David ap Gruffydd reigns after Llywelyn ap Gruffydd, right? So why isn't he on that other list, right? He's not there, and this whole thing is really upsetting. And obviously Llywelyn, the brother of David, was married to Eleanor de Montfort, right? And which is really important, right? Now, interestingly enough, this shows, okay, let me get this right. This shows Gruffydd ap Llywelyn's. This shows Gruffydd ap Llywelyn because I think he was held in Bristol, Bristol prison. There you go, Gruffydd. It clearly says there. He was actually held as a hostage. So he didn't really become a king or a leader. It was his brother that became the leader. So Gruffydd. So when we look at the timeline again, so guys, you're not glazing over. So where you've got Gruffydd ap Llywelyn there, 1244, he died as a hostage of the English, right? So David ap Llywelyn was the leader who was ruling in Wales before Llywelyn ap Gruffydd. So this is where. So we've got these illustrations here. That's Gruffydd, right? That's Gruffydd there. And so this whole thing, this whole sort of this erasing and changing of history, right? So we're going to move away from that, and we're going to go to here, right? What happened was as follows. You can put this on here. Read a little bit of the blurb. I'll put this up here deliberately. In 1255, David joined his brother Owen in challenging Llywelyn, right? This is really important. So this is why people don't like David. So in 1255, David on the end there, along with Owen, right, challenged Llywelyn the Last, Llywelyn ap Gruffydd, in 1255 to battle, right? So if we go to if we go to here, right, there's a battle, which is hang on a minute. I don't think I'm going to get through this all tonight, so I'm not going to rush it now. We'll do a bit more next week. The Battle of Bryn Derwin, right? And the Battle of Bryn Derwin in 1255 on the Llŷn Peninsula, right, led to Owen and David's defeat, right? They weren't traitors. They just wanted to challenge their brother, right? Now, David is said to have fled the battlefield. David is said to have been captured, right? But Llywelyn released him the following year and restored him to favour, right? Because he liked his brother. So what we've got, I've gone online and I've basically, I've thought, right, okay, what's going on? Now, Bryn Derwin was a battle for the unity and independence of Gwynedd born out of the division and dissension that followed the death of Llywelyn ap Iorwerth, right? Who was Llywelyn ap Iorwerth he was the greatest king, right? He died in 1240, and obviously, you've got David. The dates from there. David died in 1246, and Gruffydd died in 1244. But it basically says about the Battle of Derwin, which is mentioned in the Red Book of Hierogest. Now, the Red Book of Hierogest is in Oxford University. It's never all been translated. There's stuff in it that we don't know about, right? But we know that it's mentioned in the Book of Hierogest in 1255, and there is the translation. In those days, great strife was bred at the instigation of the devil between the sons of Gruffydd ap Llywelyn, namely Owen Goch, Owen the Red, and David on the one side and Llywelyn on the other side. And then Llywelyn and his men, trusting in God, awaited unafraid on Bryn Derwen the fierce coming of his brothers and a mighty host along with them. And before the end of 1 hour, Owen Goch was captured and David fled. Some people say that David was captured, and that leads with what I've already said, right? But he was eventually pardoned and released the following year. And then Owen was imprisoned, and Llywelyn gained possession of the territory of Owen and David without opposition to him. So, in other words, it was Owen and David were going against Llywelyn, saying, "No, we want your big bit of Wales, right?" But when Llywelyn won, he had all of Owen's and David's bit for at least a year, right? Some saying that he fled, some saying he was captured. Right, and this is the place where this all happened, right? So what we've got is that in 1263 he joined King Henry in an attack on his brother. So David, after being released in 1256, in 1263 he joined King Henry, right? So he joined King Henry, and basically King Henry said, this is King Henry III. King Henry basically says, look, David, right, if you're my friend, right, and by the way, Henry III died in 1272. If you're my friend, right, I will give you all the territory of North Wales if we can get rid of Llywelyn. You know what would have happened, right? If that would have succeeded, David would have ended up dead, right? Now, what happened then was something really strange, right? Llywelyn was acknowledged by King Henry as Prince of Wales in 1267. In other words, King of Wales. David was again restored to Llywelyn's favour. I tell you what, Llywelyn must have loved his brother so much, he forgave him again, right? He forgave his brother again. 1267. Start again. So I start again. I've gone ahead of myself. So what happened in 1267? It was the agreement of Aberconwy, right, in 1267, which basically the King of England recognised. Okay. In their eyes, the Prince of Wales, in our ways, the King of Wales, or King of Cymru, right? So David was again restored to Llywelyn's favour, but in 1274, he then joined King Edward I of England to challenge Llywelyn once again in 1274, right? Which meant, now this is why people don't like David, right? He eventually did realise that he was Welsh, but it was. There was some shenanigans going on. Now, what happened? This was in 1267. You can tell from that about it's more than 2/3 of Wales is under Welsh control, right? Is there you go. The kingdom, they call it principality, but you can see all the green bits are either ruled directly by the princes of Cymru or the kings of Cymru, Wales, or under its influence, and then the rest of it is within the province of the English. right? So then what happens is then there's the great betrayal, right? Now, even though David eventually came, to the rescue of Llewellyn, but it was obviously too late. But this is a few years later. In 1277, 1277, there was this agreement, right? And what happened was that big chunks of Wales were no longer under the control of the Welsh anymore, because it was basically David joined Edward the First, who was a new king in 1272. He joined him in 1274. And what happened was that the most of Wales that was once under the control of the Welsh has been reduced to this. So there's a lot of resentment. This was in 1277, right? So, it was all, there was lots of things going on, right? But Edward the First, Edward Longshanks, rewarded David ap Gruffydd, and he ordered David. Basically, start again. I used the wrong words there. David ap Gruffydd was awarded land in England for supporting Edward the First, right? He granted an estate in Chester to David for supporting Edward the First. So Edward the First basically said to David, if you help me reduce the power of your brother Llewellyn, right? I will give you estates in Chester, right? So 4 years went by, and what happened, right? And I know it's getting on now. So I'm there's the old Edward the First, or Edward Longshanks, right? Even though his dad passed away in 1272, he was coronated in 1274. What happened was that the end of the beginning, right? On Easter 1282, David had a meeting with Llewellyn, and Llewellyn and David came to the opinion that they should get their land back, even though it was David's fault. So David is saying to his brother, look, sorry, bro, right? Look what I've done, right? Sorry, bro. So basically, David on Easter 1282, April 1282, whenever Easter was back then, he attacked Hawarden Castle, thereby starting a war that would end the following year. Archbishop John Peckham tried to intervene in the war by suggesting that Llewellyn accept land in England in return for surrendering to Edward I, while David was supposed to go on a crusade at the king's expense. Both princes turned the offer down. So in both accounts, right, it would have meant the end of Wales anyway. So they didn't agree with this, right? So in December, his older brother, Llewellyn ap Gruffydd, went with an army to kill Mary near Belfwells, right? That's another story, right? And there's a bit of fantasy with that, i.e. Llewellyn was left alone with his squire and he was killed in a field and his army butchered. I believe that Llewellyn led the army at kill Mary, but that's something else, right? David succeeded Llewellyn as Prince of Wales, okay, King of Wales, and held the title for 10 months after his brother's death, right? So what's happening there, right, is a story that we're going to tell you about next week. So we're going to finish now. So you'll have to sign in for next week, because the next bit of the story is absolutely intriguing. A few images of castles, and I'll tell you more next week. So that's where we're going to call it a day. So I know Ruth wants to get home before it gets dark, right? Judith wants to get to bed before 9 o'clock. So we'll have to. So right. So I would like to mention that. Kate, can you get your shekels over to me if you haven't already done that? If you can get your money over, Kate, please. And I'm going to mention the live show as well. Again, if you guys do buy tickets for the live show, there's still £10 for now. And I know you're going to do it next month, Judith. So Judith, what I'll say to you, if you buy tickets next month, right, you can decide which show to go to. But obviously, I'll need to know by sort of October,
I
depending on
know,
how.
I'm so indecisive, sorry.
Don't
Yeah,
worry about it. Don't worry.
don't worry
Oh,
about it. You could
it's
decide
always
then.
my ticket.
Oh, thank you.
You could decide then. So right, okay. Meg online said listening with Bluetooth eartones also doing jobs. A lot of this is somewhere deep in memory, but fascinating reminders. So there we go. Good. Right. So okay.
Oh,
Anyone got
can I,
anything else they want to say
can
online?
I,
But what we're going to do is Anne. Anything you want to say?
can I just ask, who's the, well, there's two statues I've seen, but the one in Landilo, who's that?
Don't you mean in Llandovery or Landilo?
Landovery.
Oh yeah, Llandovery. The statue in Llandovery is associated with the local leader in Llandovery who actually supported um who actually supported Owain Glyndŵr. And I
Oh,
do believe that he was hung, drawn, and quartered as well, but that would have been in the 1400s.
okay. All
He
right
he, ba
then.
he basically led the English into a trap, but he was also executed himself. So
Right, okay.
right, anything else, Dan?
I'll look it up. No, it's fascinating, you know. Yes.
Sorry, Kate, if I don't let it out, I have
I know, don't worry, don't worry.
Okay.
Oh.
Right, okay. Right,
it
we'll
this
go on
way.
to as Ruth and Kate are talking. And Kate, I need to phone you after this to do with something else.
Okay.
And you were right about that phone call the other day, because something happened in a phone call of mine today as well. Right, Kate, anything you want to say?
Oh, that was interesting. Thank you very much. I think I had a question, but I've forgotten it already. So you're off the hook.
It was Ruth. I tell you what, Kate, I'll give you a call directly after this thing. So right, anything from you, Ruth?
Poor Llewellyn.
Oh,
That's all I
yeah.
I feel sorry for him.
Poor David.
Poor
And
David.
David.
Poor David. The thing is,
And Llewellyn. Yeah, they both were.
basically, Llewellyn ap Gruffydd's daughter was born a few months after Llewellyn was killed, and David was actually protecting his newly born daughter. And we'll tell you all about that next week. But Gwenllian ended up in a nunnery somewhere in England.
Wow.
And she lived for several decades, not knowing that she was actually the heir apparent to the Kingdom of Wales.
Yeah, it's really interesting Welsh history, real Welsh history. When you get into
Proper Welsh history, exactly.
Oh.
Right, okay then. Anything else from you, Ruth?
No, that's it.
Right, okay then. What we're going to do? We've now got to ask Judith. Is there any questions from you, Judith?
Not a question, but a comment. He's not the only king to be written out of history, is he? In Welsh history. That's all I'm going to say for now.
He's not the only one to be written out of Welsh history,
No.
and actually, Judith, you've said it now. If that's all you're going to say today, right? Anything else you want to say, Judith?
Not right now, thank you.
Right. Okay. Then. Well, what I'm going to say is this: there have been found coins associated with kings and leaders of Wales. Coins have been found, but they've disappeared, right? Which would then say that we had these people actually existed. And there's historians talking about these coins from about the 1600s onwards, but these coins disappear, right? So we don't really know anything about these leaders other than the coins, which have now disappeared. So that's an important point. So we might actually be we might have something like that in a live show, but it's going to be difficult, and we'll see. And I mentioned online the other week about basically bringing the subject of King Arthur into the live shows, but unfortunately, anyone who actually seems to touch King Arthur ends up dead. So I know
that's what I didn't want to say. I know.
I don't want to do that. I can imagine, right? We've got all these people at the last show, right? I think the last show is Abergavenny, right? My daughter's going to come along to the last show in Abergavenny, right? And the only reason why Kate's going to the live shows is she wants to meet my elder daughter. And anyway, the point is, you can imagine.
I'll go to Abergavenny. I can swap.
Yeah, let's all go together.
I can swap.
Anyway, right? Okay. The point is, you can imagine, right? We decide to do part of the show about King Arthur in the Abergavenny show, and part way through on stage, right? I get shot, and then I become famous. I become famous, and then make a Hollywood film about me. It's great. Oh,
Yeah,
wicked!
but
Bring it on!
famous.
Bring it on!
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Then finally,
Richard.
one question: shall I have this grapefruit tonight with lots of sugar on? And lastly, Judith, shall I?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. That's well done, Judith. Right. And Richard, right? Anything from you, darling?
No, really interesting. Very hard subject on the Welsh royalty and everything to get your head around.
Yeah.
It is.
You should try and
I
teach
go
it.
cross-eyed.
I'm having
You
a
should
go
try
at
and
the
teach it.
moment.
And then you got
I
Rodri Mauer as well. Oh God.
I was always fascinated by Henry, Tudor. Is it Henry Tudor, the one who?
Yeah,
Early
landed at Fishguard on the 7th of August,
he got killed. And his
1485.
He was in
brother,
Leo. Or no, is that when he arrived?
brother,
Born or arrived in August?
brother.
7th of August, 1485.
That's it.
And he married Lady Beaufort, and this is the one. But then his brother married her, and she's only 14.
Can I
14. He was supported in part by the Morgans
Oh,
of Tredegar.
Rodica, exactly.
yes,
Exactly.
They were,
came-
and that's how he came. How
he came
they
to my
came.
class.
Ian had, when John had the money to build the 1490 version of the house there.
Yeah, I mean, he did come to Lady Beaufort lived in Maesglas Castle. Oh, she went
Really?
there for a visit. And,
Ah.
and Lord Stafford. Oh, I
Cool.
don't know. I don't know. I get all mixed up sometimes.
Don't worry about it.
It's okay.
This is a question. This is a question for next week, right? What do you use, right? Men's tea, for, and they've got to have red heads.
What?
Say that again.
There's something that you process using men's urine that have red hair.
Oh, right. Okay.
You got to answer that for next week, Judith. You got to go on the research looking that up. Right, on that note, is there anything else that anyone wants to say?
No.
No. By the way, Richard, you got a fan out there. Meg loves you, Richard. She wants to know if you're married, and I said you are. So that's a bit of a shame. Yeah, we
I was
actually
just
what we
gonna
could do,
put
we
mine. I
could
did
use it.
see, who did I see? I saw Edmund Tudor's grave last week,
Oh,
yeah.
West Wales.
and
He was the brother.
Rhys ap Griffith.
Oh, you saw the grave of Rhys ap Griffith. Oh my God, you didn't, did you? Oh my God.
He's in St. David's.
Well, isn't that great that we've got those to go and see? It's the age of pilgrimage now. My age is the age.
We got to go on a pilgrimage to all these places. We got to.
Yes.
Oh God, yeah.
Well, yeah. It's just things. Other things become like more important as you get older, and
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, more important, like living. That's the main thing. That's the main thing. That's the main thing. Right. Anything else you want to say, Judith?
No, that's it for now. Thank you. That was very interesting. Thank you.
Hopefully see you all next week at 7 o'clock on Thursday. Anything else from you, Anne or Richard?
No.
No,
Good night.
good for me.
Good night, everybody.
Okay.
Night, night.
Finally,
Bye.
anything from
Bye.
hang on,
Everyone.
anything from Kate and Ruth before we finish?
No, we're
No.
good. Thank you, honey.
Bye.
Okay, no, night, Ruth,
Bye.
Kate,
Good night, Richard.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.
Judith,
Anne.
Charlie,
Good night, Judith.
Ruth, and
Good night,
everybody online.
everyone.
Right. Night. Bonkers. Right. Okay. Good. Excellent. Right. Are you still there? Are you still there, Kate? Kate.
Sorry, I'm trying to turn myself
right.
off. Sorry.
All right. No,
Bloody
Judith,
hopeless.
I hope you enjoyed that tonight anyway.
I did. It was.
She's muted herself.
Yes,
Go.
sorry, I know. Sorry, I'm pressing buttons like mad and pressing all the wrong ones. Yes, it was lovely. Thank you.
My pleasure. I'll see you next week then.
You will. Bye.
Take care, Judith. Night. Yeah, thank you very much, Carly. And thank you very much, Meg. Back on cast iron smelting myself, discovered that iron was smelted in Egypt for portions of pyramid. And you're thinking, well, people dismiss them using iron tools to build the pyramids. Yeah, but that's something else. Anyway, we're gonna call it a day. That's been great. That's been a blast. And ladies, right? Meg and Carly and whoever, if Lise gets on and whoever, right? The discussion has been great tonight. It's really fed into the class and absolutely great. Anything you've got to say, it's always welcome. And obviously the live shows, anyone wants to book for the live shows, which are next year, which anyone watching, if you want to book tickets, then you'll be very welcome to come along to the live shows next year. I'm just putting the website on, and save up and just come along. It'd be great. And the grapefruit and a cup of tea. All got to feed the animals now as well. Anyway, night, folks. Diolch yn fawr chi. Gwelwch chi eto ymar o hyd and heddwch i nawr. Diolch yn fawr chi. Thank you. Take care. I'll speak to you next Thursday. And we've obviously got next Tuesday at about 7:40, next Wednesday at 7:30, and next Thursday roughly around 7 o'clock if we can get on quicker than we did this week. A few problems. Pete's not been well. Take care. Diolch yn fawr chi. Nos da.